A lot of practitioners say it's a waste of time to test your hormones because in perimenopause, your hormones are fluctuating. Absolutely. We know that. We know that it's a wild ride in perimenopause and our hormones, they're shifting. However, it is important to understand and have a strategy of where we're going with your hormones.
Hey there, sisters. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. As usual, I'm quite excited about this conversation. And whenever I have an expert interview guest on, I'm always so curious about where this conversation is going to go. And today I have the amazing Marnee Dejong on, who is an integrative health practitioner specializing in women's hormones over 35 and in perimenopause. So obviously that's what I like to talk about. I think it's so great when I get to have other conversations with other practitioners to hear what they're seeing, what they're knowing. She is huge on teaching women how to support their hormones in midlife without the overwhelm. So I think this is a good show for you to be on. Marnee and I have a cat coming into our story here, but you're also in Canada, which I love. I think we're going to get into today, tools that can help our Canadians and maybe people outside of the US, like how women can access different tools and resources. But I love what you do. I love how you help women. Welcome to the Period Whisperer podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're here. And like I said, we're both, Canadian. I don't live in Canada anymore. So for the Canadians listening and even, the women listening in other parts of the world, I do think it's helpful to hear other tips and resources for tools. And I think we're going to talk about something today. We're going to talk about things that maybe should make you go, in perimenopause, or tools, with all this influencer stuff. But let's start with you. Tell us, a little bit maybe more about what got you into working with women in the perimenopause years.
Guessing almost 10 years ago, I guess you could call it a health crisis where I ended up having mold toxicity, where my body pretty much shut down and I was just trying to survive. And that kind of opened my eyes to functional health, where I was going to doctors and trying to find answers, and I was getting nowhere. I had a full body MRI and everything checked out fine on my blood work. And that's where I landed on functional testing and working with a functional health practitioner. And that's really where my journey started, of recognizing I'm probably not alone, and other women are probably in the similar boat of trying to get answers for their health and coming up against a block where their blood work all checks out normal and they really have nowhere to go. And so that's where I started digging deep into how to support my body. And I also coincided with hormonal changes. Along with that, dealing with, gut issues. I was also dealing with a lot of different things. And so that's where I started digging deep into, I have to take ownership and be my own best advocate, right, for my health, because I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with specialists. And that's where I started learning more about, hormones and perimenopause and supporting, and how I supported my health and my body. And then I went and took a course through Dr. Stephen Cabral, through the integrative health practitioner course, and learned functional testing. And that's kind of what drove my passion to work with women, because again, like myself, so many women are just feeling stuck. They're doing a lot of things right, or just feeling overwhelmed in this midlife season where, what do we need to be doing? And I just knew I was building out a strategy that was working for me, and I knew I needed to share it with other women.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's amazing how often I hear the story of, I think, those of us now teaching and helping other women in this transition. Like, it's almost like it hit us earlier because of whatever. Mold toxicity, for me, it was like complete adrenal fatigue. Other people, it's, other toxic burdens. And that's, it slams us. And we really do recognize that there's not a lot of answers, and someone's got to figure it out.
And I always say, it's never just one thing. Like, whether it be, mineral deficiencies or it's gut pathogens. And for me, I had to kind of unwind, right? Go through everything and realize, okay, yes, I had mold toxicity, but there was inflammation in my body. I also had, gut dysbiosis, and my microbiome was a disaster, and my detox pathways. So I always say, sometimes when we get to this midlife phase, there's usually a few things that we need to unravel. It's never just, one thing. Like, oh, if I just get rid of candida, I'll have it figured out. Or, I probably just have high cortisol. So once I get that figured out, it's multi-layered. And I think that's where it's really important to kind of recognize that, it's a full body, system that we need to address.
When you finally did this functional lab work for yourself and started to realize some of the issues, certainly the mold toxicity was a part of that picture and some of the other issues. How long do you think it took you before you're like, oh, I feel good?
I mean, it's a process, right? Like mold wreaks havoc on your whole system, right? I gained probably 15 pounds, right? Because your body's protecting itself. So I had to really learn why my body was doing certain things. Breaking out in rashes. I had incredible migraines and headaches. So looking back now, I can see it. So now it all made sense. So the dots kind of with functional testing, doing the organic acids test, it now made sense of like, okay, this all adds up, but blood work wasn't showing that. It wasn't just a quick, okay, even in my MRI, luckily my brain scan was great, but we didn't know what was going on, right? Because I was having such debilitating migraines, but it took a process to fully, get mold out of my system and do all the things to support my liver and get that going again, right? And healing my gut and my hormones, all the things. So I never say I'm completely healed because I think it's an ongoing process. I don't think I'm there. I, still have to support my liver. I still, focus on drainage pathways and making sure that toxins are, moving through my body and obviously gut health, all the things. It's never a one and done. But it is a process. And I think the biggest thing is being patient, that it's a journey and it's never linear, but it is doable. And I think that if anything, for a lot of women, that healing can take place. You'd have to be patient, but you also have to have a strategy and know what you're doing. Because how many people, is a whole nother conversation, but jump to, I want to do a parasite cleanse or jumping into a heavy metal detox or doing all these, big protocols, but we have to sometimes take a step back and we have to do the foundation stuff and we have to start, where our body needs it most. And a lot of times that's just stepping back a little bit from the big picture, not jumping too fast, too big right at the beginning.
I love that. I love that you talked about the patience because I found in my own journey, like you said, it's not an end because we are consistently dealing with new stressors and new exposures and new gut challenges. Like it's not a destination. It is that journey, but it was a solid 6 months of working, of consistency, of trying something new consistently before I was like, I could exhale a little bit. So I think it is, I love the saying that out loud to women so they know that if things don't rectify and all of a sudden they feel amazing after 3 months, like it takes time, especially, when you have greater debt in your body, we would call it. What were the tests that you did? And then what are the tests? Do you have like, because you work in a very specific niche like I do you have sort of initial starting labs that you like to run for clients?
Yeah, I would probably say my 3 top ones I use with all my clients would be the hair tissue mineral analysis. So that is a great place to start. And I love this one because it gives us a good picture of where to start. So I think mineral balancing is a great place for many women because they come to me usually exhausted. And I always say our cells are our spark plugs. So first and foremost, we got to start at a cellular level of just building that up. So many women, due to stress, become depleted. And so that's a great one to start because we can also see kind of a baseline of your metabolism. We can also see where you're deficient in your minerals, but we also see your ratios of where do we need to start. Maybe not specifics, but for so many women, when it comes to hormones, they don't know where to start. Is it my adrenals? Is it my thyroid? Is it my blood sugar? So for a lot of women, it's definitely a great place to start. So I love that one. And then the GI map. I love gut testing. Heal your gut, heal your hormones. I mean, that is a big connection. And it has been for me. So that was one I did right away because I knew there was gut work to be done. And so that is a great one to start to see pathogens, to see, your immune, to see so many things, leaky gut that really are depleting you and has, system-wide repercussions when it comes to your liver, your thyroid, like they're all connected. So definitely the GI map is a great one. And then obviously the Dutch test I use with clients. And I know this one, a lot of practitioners say it's a waste of time to test your hormones because in perimenopause, your hormones are fluctuating. Absolutely. We know that. We know that it's a wild ride in perimenopause and our hormones are changing, they're shifting. There is this decline. However, it is important to understand your baseline. And I think it's really important for us to understand and have a strategy of where we're going with your hormones, especially if you're going to start on HRT. If you're going to start hormones, I always say test, don't guess, because for many women, we can make assumptions that, oh, I think it's estrogen dominance, or it's probably low progesterone, or your cortisol is too high. And which is interesting because often I'll test, women's hormones and you think, oh, definitely this is adrenal hormones. You have typical, adrenal fatigue, your cortisol. And then I get their results back and I'm like, your cortisol is actually flatlined. Like you have the opposite and we need to support your cortisol and adrenals in a different way. So this is where it's really important as a practitioner for me to have the right picture, the full picture of what's happening with your hormones before we go into a custom protocol, because I don't want to make assumptions and then do further damage or further, stuff that's not actually helpful. So if I'm assuming you have high cortisol and I'm like, we need to lower your cortisol, but actually that's not the picture. That's not the case. Right? I need to have the right strategy. So that's where the Dutch, even in perimenopause, I think it's a great test because you need a baseline. We need to know where we need to go, especially when you're supporting hormones. You don't want to go into this just guessing and making assumptions because, hormones, symptoms are just telling us something's off. They're just messengers. Really, we need to know the full picture, even thyroid, all those things. We need to have data. I would say data is going to be the best way to move forward because so many women, I think, approach it with a generic approach. And I think unless we have specifics for your body, you're going to get the best results versus a generic gut protocol or a generic hormone protocol that can only do so much for you. And I think that's the power of functional testing.
It gets under a little my skin when I hear, people say that it's like, oh, there's no point in testing your hormones. So just we'll go off of your symptoms. And it's like, first of all, on a Dutch, your sex hormone levels are like the tiniest part of the value that you get out of a Dutch. And you're absolutely right. Like what doesn't fluctuate is your cortisol clearance, is your estrogen clearance, is the actual function pathways of the hormones, which honestly, 8 times out of 10 is where the problem lands, is where it begins. So I love that you said, and it's, to kind of segue into our, key topic of things that make you go, I think taking anything without testing should make you go, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, maybe this is your problem. Let's just take a medication. Let's just go for it. So, both of us align on this. Like, I think functional lab work, especially to, before you start taking something like HRT is so key for optimizing your result and how you feel. I know, like, as a practitioner that works with Canadians too, I know that it is much more challenging to get hormone replacement therapy for my Canadian clients through their traditional medical pathways. Is that what you find as well?
Yeah, I'm noticing that there's kind of for lack of a better word, barrier for women to be accessing these tools. So hormone replacement therapy is one that I find many women are interested. Obviously, I can't prescribe it. I'm not a medical doctor, but I do want my clients to understand it, that they know it's a tool, that it is a great resource. Is it the be all and end all? Absolutely not. It's not a magic, pill that all of a sudden it's going to magically, change. Can it be life changing and altering for many women that are like, like it's that, oh, wow, this is what I've been missing. And the reality is, as our hormones are declining, there's only so much supplements and only so much. And sometimes our body needs that extra support where it needs these hormones that are going to help optimize, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is once these hormones are gone, they're gone. So what can we do? And I think there's, these narratives around HRT that, you can't use them unless symptoms are really severe, right? Like you're too young. I've had clients say to me, doctors have told them they're too young for HRT, or they're not far along, or they're not in menopause, right? They're still cycling. There's so many, misperceptions. And I think we're cutting through that a little bit now. I think there's more awareness and I think there's more education around that. But for so many women, it's overwhelming. Like, where do I start? Where do I access this? And I think for many women in Canada, going to, their first line is going to their family doctor. And if they're not well versed in hormones, or they're looking at past data or, past research saying, they're dangerous, they're going to cause cancer, not looking at the positives of it's protective. And there's a lot of benefits too for many women to start on these, and they don't need to bottom out. You don't need to be just trying to push through and just kind of surviving to then feel like, okay, now I better do something. So this is kind of, the narrative I'm hoping my clients see is that these are tools. You need to have those foundations in place. That's what we teach inside my program is if we want them to work and you really want them to be effective, there are some things you can't just jump into something and it is a tool. But I think there's a lot of things that an education and things that need to be done. But specifically in Canada, I know we are more cautious. We a lot of times don't focus so much on prevention. There's a lot of that going on in Canada where it can feel like a barrier where you need to find a specialist. And in Canada, finding and getting into a specialist is not always easy and it's very time consuming. So that becomes kind of an obstacle. And my hope is that we don't have as many obstacles for women to get these tools and feel like there's somebody that understands their hormones and these specialists that actually can help them, dial in these hormones and get the proper education tools to help them thrive really in midlife.
So for you, when you're working with a client, we've done the foundations, you've run the labs. So we've, optimized minerals and optimized, detox pathways of the hormones and clearance pathways. And the next logical step that could benefit them would be hormone replacement therapy. What do you, especially when we know if you have clients that are like, well, my doctor tells me, my FSH and my LH levels aren't low enough for me to go on hormones. What do you do then?
Well, I think for a lot of women, that's where the conversation needs to happen is a lot of women come to me and they, like you said, they're doing all those things. So they are in a good place where there comes a point where maybe supplements, doing all the testing, everything, and they've done a lot of that and they know there's more work or there needs maybe something else that can be done. And that's where we approach the HRT. So that's where I'm like, maybe this is something that we need to consider. Again, it's a tool. And I think with HRT, it's really important to recognize that it's going to take time to figure it out. I think a lot of women go into it and finding a practitioner or a service that will really help you, a medical service that will help you work with you and get your dosing right. Make sure they're testing, making sure they're doing all the things right, because we don't want to like jump into this. But I always say with HRT, even for myself, it took time to get the dosing right, and working with a practitioner that was able to tweak, my dose and also be able to have those conversations about how you're administering it, right? Because there's lots of different ways. Sometimes oral progesterone doesn't work for some women. So we need to then have that conversation of like, okay, there are other options that you can access it, right? Because there's just some ways of administering it that it doesn't work for you. So also realizing that it is going to take time to get it right. And that's okay. It's your body's not broken. If there's nothing wrong, it just is finding the sweet spot, I guess you could say, for many women. So I think for me, I'm advocating for my clients and finding different services and medical practitioners that are willing to work with women. So that is kind of my goal right now. My passion is there are some tools out there. Canada's a little bit harder to access those, but I am hopeful that there are services out there and people that they can actually access without a, massive wait list or just sitting on the sidelines waiting, hoping that their family doctor will eventually do something for them or finally, say, hey, okay, let's consider this. So that right now is a big thing. I think in the States, it's easier access, but in Canada, I think we're slow to get there.
It is funny. I do have clients here in the US that are like, their doctor's like, no, you're not ready yet. Like, so we still see those kind of old school ways of thinking of women's health around. But I think what we're saying here is it's not to gatekeep what the next level is, but it is really important to work first with a practitioner on, again, the underlying, the optimization and your foundations. And then having that practitioner be able to refer you out to a prescribing practitioner that is going to help you and monitor you appropriately.
Absolutely.
So on the second topic of things that should make you go, you and I originally connected around peptide therapy. That's kind of how we first came to be. And I remember saying, like, it seems more challenging in Canada to be able to access peptides, and we're hearing more and more about them. Are you hearing women in Canada become more and more aware of peptide therapy?
Yes, I think we're seeing it on social media. I think we are aware of it. It's nothing. I don't, for lack of a better word, is it trending? Peptides are blowing up. Not that they're new. They've been around for a long time. So they're not new. They've been used for a long time and many of them are well researched, but I think there's now more awareness of them. So I think I'm showing up in a lens of curiosity of, you know, what can these do for women? What are the benefits of it? The longevity piece. It's not about, being skinny. It's not about just fully weight loss. And we're noticing that there's a lot of benefits to it. So that's where I jumped into the, peptide practitioner course. And where we met is I wanted to get the information. I want to understand them myself personally, but I also want to use them with clients because, again, like HRT, I think it's another tool that for many women, it can be beneficial. But again, there's a lot of nuances to it that I think we have to recognize that it's not just a quick fix or it's just not a one and done. It's, again, figuring out working with a medical practitioner who can prescribe them properly and work with you to get it right and making sure you are doing the testing, know your levels, where you're at, your health, and have a baseline before you would start those. So I don't think peptides are going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think they're here to stay. So there is two camps, I think, going on right now where people are saying, yes, let's be curious about them. Let's explore them. Let's learn about them. How are they helping just people in general, women, especially in midlife? And we sat, in multiple meetings with other functional health practitioners and hearing stories of, other women and using it with their clients and getting really good results. Really good results with specifics, whether they're feeling stuck when it comes to their weight, whether it be insulin resistance, whether it be reducing inflammation, whatever that looks like. We're noticing and seeing that people are using it with their clients and getting good results. And I get there's a little bit of a swing of, are these just now a quick fix? Are these, taking a shortcut? Are you using them just to, lose the weight quickly, and then what are the repercussions? So that's where I'm hoping, with a lot of us that are, in the functional health space, is that we can come with it with, knowledge and understanding of these are their benefits when it comes to peptides.
Yeah, I love that you say that. I do think it is our opportunity as practitioners to educate how to safely use things because, like all things in this world, there are ways to use things appropriately and then ways to use things not. And that is called abuse. And that is when we have side effects and problems, is when things are used, and I understand. I certainly know people and have certainly been in a place in my life where I'm like, I don't really care what it is. I'll do it anyway because I'm so uncomfortable or I'm so unhappy. I need to get this result fast. But I think we've all learned by now in midlife that you don't get something for nothing. And if you use something in the way it's not meant to be used, even something like food, we know if we use food inappropriately, creates a problem in us. And I think that's where this fear or opportunity we have to properly educate and continue to be curious, like you were saying, is so valuable when we have influencers or people who aren't practitioners out there saying, oh, try this and order this. Because you and I were talking, the reality is here in the US, there is very much like a multi-level marketing affiliate approach to peptide therapy. So now people are able to purchase, with very light gatekeeping, I would say, on the front, you know, prescriptions that someone else is making money off. And if that person isn't educated, then they might be giving you advice that maybe isn't
Yeah.
necessarily.
And I think that's where a little bit of the it comes in for a lot of people is where's the support? Where is the foundational things? Where are, just the fact that you bought it from somebody who, like an influencer, that is really just showing up on social media to make money. And they're building, a brand or a business versus, a practitioner like ourselves that are trying to bring it into our work and say, hey, you know what? Let's learn about this. Let's see if this is an option for you. And let's get you to a medical practitioner that can actually help support you. So I think there's two folds. Like, I think for us, yes, we're helping support them in our practice and in our work of helping them do the things to support their hormones. But then I think we're bringing it in, but we're also not doing it solo. So we're also not the one that is, figuring out their dosing and what is the best peptide. They're actually having that support elsewhere. So it's collaborative. And I think that's where it's very key, where it's collaborative, where you're getting it from two sides, the health benefits and that, but you're also working with somebody that is medically trained to give this prescription. And it's not coming from just somebody, for lack of a better word, just an influencer on social media that's like, hey, there's a sale on peptides, try it, or yeah, do it right now. It's where I hopefully we can get away from that, where it feels, and I know that's more of an American thing. In Canada, I feel we are hearing it all about this on social media, and we're seeing it kind of unravel. But because we don't have access to these specific um, organizations or, companies, we're sitting on the back lines here saying, you know, I kind of am curious and I want to learn more about it. And would this work for me? But how do I go about it? So that's where I think we're just maybe a step behind of not in the influencer world and in the, multi-level marketing kind of world with peptides right now. We're trying to access it. And is there websites and can you get peptides? Yes. But a lot of them aren't monitored and you really don't have the support. And that's a little bit of a scary place to be too, for women to not have that support. So they maybe want to try, but they're not sure they're dosing. They're not sure how to administer. And let's be honest, when you're using peptides, they are a prescription. They are something that you don't want to go into lightly. You want to make sure that you're using them properly. You want to make sure your dosing's properly, because I think for a lot of women or people that are using them and maybe having side effects or it's not working for them, it could be due to you're not using them properly and you aren't working with a medical practitioner who's trained to teach you and show you how to use the peptides properly.
Absolutely. I agree. I think there's not only just dosing, there's cycling of peptides. There's markers that tell us in our labs of whether it's, safe for us or not. We're talking about the GLPs here. We're also talking about, some of the ones that I love to talk about, NAD. I love to talk about some of the growth hormone releasing peptides, some of the healing peptides, but they all do require consideration. And I think when I hear you talk about that collaborative piece, what I think is so powerful about first working with a practitioner like you or myself, and then being referred and collaborating with a prescribing practitioner, I think you're getting kind of the support, as you said, the support on both ends. You're getting like the educated, and there's a liability on both sides. Like for you and I, as practitioners, like it matters that my clients get results. Like if they don't
Yeah.
get results, I'm not gonna have a business anyway. So, there's a really vested interest, I think, in being smart about these things, allowing this curiosity of the social media to kind of, sure, let it spark, but then we really you really need to go, if you're not doing a little bit more research, or at least, working with someone who maybe is educated more in that area.
Hopefully that's the trajectory. Like that's hopefully where we're going, where I think there was a lot, and I've noticed, and maybe I'm sure it's everywhere, but using peptides, but there's not a lot of transparency around it, right? So a lot of people are, we're scared. Oh, they're on Ozempic. And I think Ozempic kind of set that tone where a lot of celebrities were using it, and it kind of kind of got a little bit tainted, right? Because I think that was our first experience a couple years back of all these celebrities secretly using it, but not being transparent about it. And I think peptides have come a long way. I think we've, once you get into the research and, the different peptides that are now being used for longevity purposes. I love NAD plus. That's one of the, one that I love personally that I've been using. And I think for a lot of people, that Ozempic kind of world was scary for people, and it just didn't fit them. So that's not what it looks like when we're working with our clients, is all these side effects, and they're losing weight, and the Ozempic face and Ozempic butt and all those things. I think there's a lot of stories and misunderstandings about it, and hopefully we can kind of move past that. And I mean, I'm not new to the fact of using these different tools. I had really, really low B vitamins at one point, and I was having tremors and twitching. And I didn't know what was going on. Again, I saw a neurologist, and we couldn't figure out why my hands, this was probably, 15 years ago, to almost maybe even 20 years ago. And I was seeing a neurologist, and my functional health practitioner slash naturopath said this could be a deficient, B issue. And I started doing B12 shots in my butt, and the twitching went away. And so this is just a story to, say sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so sometimes, again, I still do B12 shots because, again, for energy, I know my body can get very deficient very fast. It is a good way to, some people don't absorb B vitamins very well. And so I was one of those people. But again, I was so thankful that, my practitioner was like, hey, it could be a B deficiency, like a very severe. Obviously, it was very severe, and that's why we went the, injection route. And I've never had them again. Glutathione, again, technically not a peptide, but it is something that, again, works really well to jumpstart detoxing. And we know it's the master antioxidant that we need to help, right? So when I was really sick with mold, again, I didn't jump into glutathione IVs or pushes right away, but it was part of my healing journey after I'd done some work and foundations and got my body to a place where we recognized I need a little bit extra support. And so glutathione was another great resource and tool for me to help. So recognizing that there's so many different places, where it be vitamins, where it be cellular health, whether it be helping detox, whether, it be helping with insulin resistance, they have a lot of different roles. And so we're hopefully getting away from it's just the skinny shot of, take it, and that's, why you're taking it. There's a lot of different reasons why I think women are going to start exploring peptides.
Obviously the GLPs get the most press, good and bad, but because our culture is super obsessed with tying thinness to worth and to value. And so that's why I think it gets misused. I mean, we don't hear many, or I have yet to collect a horror story of someone misusing NAD plus or,
Yeah.
misusing glutathione or B12 shots. Like we just don't really get those same things because it is like a mental, emotional block, I think, for us. So again, another reason to be using a practitioner to talk about these things. But what I do love is like hearing from you, as we know in Canada, accessibility to the GLPs is there if you qualify, B12 shots, glutathione injections, NAD, IVs, these are all available through naturopaths, through med spas, like things like that are very possible to have safe options where you're not doing peptide math and mixing your own beriostatic water, and then injecting something into your body. When you inject something without understanding it, I've loved this conversation, Marnee. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this, for the value that you add. If you had to share anything with the women listening, anything raw, unfiltered advice about navigating midlife and optimizing your health, I'm putting you on the spot, but what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say be your own best advocate. I think in midlife, don't sit back and just hope for the best. I think recognize that there are tools out there, and we've talked about those. We've talked about two really big ones, HRT and peptides. So coming with a sense of curiosity and would this be something that might benefit me, but also recognizing that there is support, that you don't just need to dial it in and be like, you know what, I am dealing with all these perimenopause symptoms and this is as good as it's going to get.
Mhm.
It does, you don't need to ride it out. And I think, does it take effort? Does it take initiative? Absolutely. There are, I think when the world, and life is busy, it's easy to put yourself on the back burner and it's easy to just, you know, get in survival mode of, just I got to push through. And how many women are pushing through and fighting against their body and recognizing that you can have a strategy, you can show up in perimenopause, and what you're doing, in your 20s and 30s maybe isn't going to be as effective. So that's where we need to kind of accept that we're not in that season anymore. We're in a different season, but it can be empowering.
Yeah.
And you can feel good again, feel like yourself again. And I think that is a reality, but you do have to step out of your own way, right? You have to I think it's very easy to put up a lot of excuses or barriers or whatever, but recognizing there are people like yourself, like myself, that will work with you to help you get to that place and explore all these tools and kind of open those doors that I think a lot of women feel are closed and it feels overwhelming. Perimenopause absolutely can feel overwhelming. And there is a lot of noise on social media, and we are in a day and age where there's so much information, so much coming at us that it's hard to filter and know what is best for you. So that's where, like, you take, out the overwhelm, take out the noise, and let's focus in on what action needs to be done. And I think that's going to benefit women the most when they have a strategy and they have somewhere to go that they feel supported fully, because you don't have to do it alone. I think connection, and I think so many women are navigating hormones alone and feeling overwhelmed, and they don't need to.
Yeah, I love that. And as you said, we have to take time. You have to start prioritizing your health. It has to happen now.
Absolutely.
Marnee, thank you so much. I love how you explain things. It's so beautiful, the energy you put out. If we want to get into your world, where do we do that best?
You can find me on Instagram. It's just Marnee.Dejong. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, Marnee Dejong Wellness. And yeah, that's probably the best place to find me right now.
Great. I have both those links in the show notes, sisters. So, Marnee, thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, sisters, now you have, I think, more knowledge, more education, hopefully some more action steps to take to educate yourself and feel better and be more in your life and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you in the next episode.